good afternoon. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Split Cafe. My man Matt, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? I missed last week, so it's great to be back here with you guys and Sienna being on the show. It's gonna I already know it's gonna be a great show, so I'm really excited to tackle it in these topics that we're about to dive into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to note that one of our biggest advocates, Dr. Foti, has made
Shout
this
out to Dr.
introduction.
Foti.
Yeah, so a huge shout out to Dr. Foti for getting this connection going. Sienna, you want to introduce yourself and kind of give us an idea of what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so my name is Sienna. I'm a neurointegrative mindset coach. I have a degree in cognitive behavioral neuroscience, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about health on the brain, some dabbling of neuroplasticity, and some stress addiction, probably.
I love it. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, it should be good.
I'm excited too. You know, I was kidding with you guys before we came on air about me trying to spell neuroplasticity, right? And so I'm really excited to really figure out how to spell it after we get off the air. But I'm really excited to figure out and dive into the topic. So yeah.
So yeah, let's start there then. Neuroplasticity.
Sure, yeah, seems like the hot topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know too much about neuroplasticity and the importance of health and mindset, but that is a huge focus for me. And the biggest concept about it is that your brain can change, right? And a lot of people don't think that you can change your old habits or if you're stuck in a certain thought pattern loop. But you can, it just takes a lot of intention and motivation to do so. So, how
And
the
real
brain,
quick,
go ahead.
just for the listeners, when you say make a change, is that structurally, chemically, or both?
Both. So your brain is functioning on electrochemical signals, but it's also functioning on its actual pathways that are physically changeable because the neuroplasticity means your brain is plastic, and that means it is changeable. And that's not just like the neuron patterns, but it's also the structure itself. Like you can improve your memory, and a certain area of your brain called the hippocampus will get bigger physically.
Wow.
Yeah.
How ironic that they call it the hippocampus, right? The hippo, and it can get bigger, right? So
Yeah, that's right. It can get bigger.
I will not forget that for the rest of my life. The area of the brain
That was a good one, Matt.
hippocampus, and it can get bigger. So there you go. When I go to the San Diego Zoo now and I go see the hippos, I'm thinking, hey, the hippocampus.
Neuroplasticity.
Memory, yeah.
Fantastic.
So how do these changes come about? So, for instance, you mentioned memory. How does this change come about? How does it happen? What do we have to do to make this happen? Or is it just like an automatic thing?
Usually it is through repetition. You can have short-term changes, like when you're trying to remember like a number sequence or someone's phone number, like that's not going to stick forever, right? But the more that you do it, the more long-term changes you can make. And actually things like exercise can help with memory and stuff like that and improving like how your brain changes, which is very interesting. Not many people know that, but the way that you can make structural changes is usually through routine and habit. Like people say it takes 66 days to change a habit, and that does have to do with how long it takes to structurally change your brain and your thought patterns.
That's
I've
interesting.
always
I never
heard,
knew that.
you say 66 days, and why did they say it takes 21 days to form a new habit though? Like,
I
have
think
you
it's
ever heard that?
right?
Like,
I've
heard that
heard
one
both.
too.
I
Yeah.
have fact checked it several times because of how many times I've heard both.
yeah,
But most research shows 66 days.
days.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
So how long does it take to form the habit?
Like
I
20
think
seconds?
it really varies per person and what kind of habits are being broken in the process because some people are very tied in their old ways and it's hard to break a habit and form a new habit. Some people, they have the time, they have the motivation, and they can form a new habit in a couple weeks. In my own work, I've seen people really sustain habit changes in a week, and some people it takes 3 months. It just varies.
So it's not a one size fits all.
No, neither is a brain, so it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things I know we were talking about, like brain exercise, and that actually helps with memory. and in turn will actually help with the neuroplasticity and actually making that change. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So something I think is really cool about physical exercise that not a lot of people know is it increases this thing in your brain called BDNF, which is Brain-Derived Neurotrophic Factor, which you don't need to know, but BDNF, what people refer to this as is kind of like a brain fertilizer, though, because you need this stuff for your brain to function, but also to grow new neurons, especially in that area we talked about, the hippocampus. And
So exercise basically fertilizes the brain to create new brain cells. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot of research has shown specifically the impact of this on the area related to memory and learning, which is that hippocampus area. So some people don't really think that physical exercise is helping your focus or your motivation or your memory, but it has everything to do with that because you're feeding your brain what it needs in order to function better.
Now, that makes sense. Let me ask you this, right? So I'm a middle-aged, male, right? And there is the science behind, like, when you get older, your testosterone levels drop, right? So the motivation to work out is lacking, so to speak, right? Depending on what your levels are. And I'm sure, it varies with every male, but it's kind of a balance then, because if your testosterone levels are dropping and your hormones are dropping or whatever, but you need this BDNF to fertilize the brain for the new brain cells, where is that kind of balance where I've got to get off the couch even though I don't want to, because it's going to make me smarter and it's going to fertilize these brain cells, right? So I mean, am I safe to say that's kind of the balance that males are working with? I mean, obviously females too, but the less you exercise, the less smarter you become, or like, I'm just trying to understand where
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Like, do you lose? Are you going to lose it and eventually it's just going to deteriorate if you just become a couch potato? That's what
I would say.
That's a really good question.
Starting with that last question, they say move it or lose it for a reason, because not just physically, when you're not moving your body, you're also losing part of your brain connections to an extent, because you're not using them in the same way. And it doesn't mean that if you have a more sedentary life, you're gradually becoming less smart, but it does mean you're not growing like you should be if you're moving, because humans are made to move, right? But life lately has been made very able to be sedentary and work from home and not go outside at all anymore. And that's okay, but it can take a toll on your overall mental functioning, but also your physical health. But anything that takes a toll on your physical health is also going to take a toll on your mental functioning.
Wow.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go start working out right now. So I'll see you on a little bit.
And I do want to say, though, you don't have to be doing like weight training all the time. Like these studies are based on aerobic and resistance training, but also walking. Walking at least 10 minutes a day has been shown to boost chemicals related to a positive mood, like serotonin and noradrenaline and other things like that. But
question, I'm glad you said walking, right? Because obviously I have, and I'm just referring back to me because, personal observations, but I have a small animal. We walk all the time, at least 5 or 6 times. I try to encourage him to go out for walks. So I've read and seen, things on TikTok or Instagram or articles saying the importance of a dog sniffing, even if it's for 5 minutes. It can increase his, brain activity is like walking for miles, right? Even if it's just sniffing for 5 minutes, right? So getting out and walking is one thing. Now, what about meditation though? Like, can that release some of those BDNFs and that fertilizer you were kind of referring to try and kind of organize those brain waves?
That is a great question. I have never seen a study on meditation and BDNF, but I've seen tons of studies on meditation increasing neuroplasticity and increasing the same sort of things, because what it does in my own kind of vision for this is it's taking your brain and it's kind of making the pathways that you have bigger, whether or more expansive into different regions, whether you're exercising or whether you're meditating. It's making you use different areas of your brain that you don't usually use when you're working. You don't usually use when you're in the same routines. And that's the whole idea behind preventing neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. Because again, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Same thing with your cognitive functions, same thing with your memory. But doing things like meditation and physical exercise are pushing your boundaries in your brain to an extent.
And helping that hippocampus
expand. Yes.
Yes. I love it. I love it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I meditate and walk my dog, so I'm
you're on a good track.
I'm on a track.
Yeah.
Now I just need to post. I just need to check in on social media that I'm at the gym, and then I think my life will be fine balanced, right?
Then you'll be completely well-rounded.
Great workout today, Matt. So anyway, yeah.
So what about like cognitive function and like behavior? How does that happen in our brain? We do a lot of things on a daily basis, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. Some people might go rob a bank. Someone might go to the grocery store and help an old lady get something off the shelf. We do things every day in our life, and that's, cognitive. How does that happen? What happens in our brain when these things, like why does someone choose to help someone that needs help and is vulnerable, and then the other person just walks by and doesn't even bat an eye about it? How does that play out in our brain?
I think that has a lot to do with just genetics and also how you were raised, because your childhood has everything and more to do with your kind of neural fingerprint and how you see things, how you think about certain things. And so behavior is tied directly to thought, right? Because some people have, for example, worse impulse control, and that can lead to addiction. But it's all linked to your thought process and how you act on thoughts. Some people act on their thoughts more often than others. And that is kind of a habit that's formed over such a long time and can form into an addiction to impulsive behavior or something like that. But it all starts with a thought usually.
Hey, that kind of like
whether it be intrusive or not, it all starts from thought, right? It depends on if that person decides to act on it, if it's a negative thought or whatever, right?
And if they spiral down into those thoughts, or if they take their power to choose to shift. That's a big thing that I talk to people about, is like taking the power to shift your mind and shift your thoughts and therefore change your actions. But it all starts with thought regulation, which leads to mindset.
Gotcha.
I have one question. Have you ever wanted to interview a serial killer? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
I would say no, but I would be intrigued to see I definitely dove into kind of research about serial killers before, and kind of just like their brains and their sort of thought processes and how their impulse control is so different. But
that's exactly where I was trying to get to, is like, you talked about the thought, whether it be intrusive or not, it depends on if you act upon it, right? And then some people have the power to shift and say, hey, you know what, that is a negative thought, that is probably bad or illegal or whatever, I'm not going to do that, it's just an intrusive thought. Some people just spiral and go down that road, right? And so that's what I was trying to get at, is the people that tend to commit crime or a serial killer, obviously those are ones that have really, really spiraled out of control, or need to fulfill some sort of need or desire or whatever it is. I just assumed that someone in your field would absolutely love to kind of either interview or see a brain like that, to where this guy's got no hippocampus, but he's like crazy, So.
Yeah. I feel like I have read things before, though, just as far as like the impulse control and the different chemicals that they have. And I think I've read that it's more of like a genuine craving to do that, and it's not something they really control in some sort of weird addictive way, but I haven't looked into it enough to fully say.
That's interesting. That could be a whole new episode. That one right there.
I'd have
would
to
be
do some
interesting.
research, but we could definitely talk about that.
Well,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome to come back anytime you want. So when you're ready, just let us know, because I don't want to say I used to fall asleep to like SVU, like crime and like Law and Order SVU, until I got married, and now we've watched
Snapped.
Evil Lives Here and Forensic Files, right? And so it's just kind of, it's the mind of people that do harmful things to other people. It's fascinating why they would kind of
do the things they do.
Nature versus nurture, right? Like, it's that sort of thing. What environment did they grow up in, or what, how were they raised? And so it's just a baffling thing. So I'm really excited to be
on that. Well, so I read an article a couple of years ago, maybe even longer than that, and I couldn't tell you where the article's from or who wrote it or who was being interviewed, but I do remember that it was a psychologist, and they specifically said, if you enjoy like those type of movies or shows like Murder Mystery, Snap, Force 48, Forensic Files, things like that about killing people and murder and things like that, that you're a little bit psychopath yourself. And I'm not saying that that's true, but that made me laugh, because I listen to like crime junkies all the time. And I mean, I listen to these things, but I've never had a thought like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I know so many people who just love that. And I think that's just like, that's a human, I want to say that's a human thing, just because it's like, it's fascinating. It captures your attention in a different way. But unless you're having the thoughts about committing those acts yourself, I don't, in my own opinion, I wouldn't classify that as like psychopathy.
That's what I said too. I was like, just because I enjoy it and I'm fascinated about why people do these things doesn't mean I want to do it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I thought it was funny when I read it.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
For full disclosure, the Forensic Files thing, the narrator, Peter Thomas, who's passed away, and there's like 19, I think there's 19 or 20 seasons. He has the most soothing voice, so it's almost like, I'm not even
Stacy Keach on American Greed.
Yeah, I'm not even paying attention to what the story is. It's more him narrating it and narrating me to sleep, and so it's kind of like, we remember that guy, Unsolved Mysteries, Robert Stack or whatever, that he had the best voice. Anyway, so I got off topic, I'm sorry, but
so I have one more question about neuroplasticity, and then we'll give you the floor, and you can talk about a couple things that we might have missed or anything that you want our listeners.
I want to talk about stress addiction, but yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so that'll actually kind of play into it, and I'm very hesitant to use these words, or I'm trying to use proper words so people don't try to crucify me for saying this, because there's a lot of people that don't really like when these things are brought up. But 12 steps when it comes to addiction. In the 12-step process, I don't want to say they say this exactly, but you're going to be an addict the rest of your life, and you're going to struggle. Like, it's going to, like, they don't mean it like that straight derogatory, like you're screwed the rest of your life, but it's saying you have a brain disease and you're going to struggle to stay sober. You just have to stay with your program, do this and do that, and you'll be good. Mm-hmm. But does that not go against neuroplasticity in itself? Saying that you can't change, that your brain's always going to be an addict?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I do believe that neuroplasticity is an ability everyone has their entire life. It can degenerate as you get older and if you seep into other disorders, but I think that you can change. Addiction is a really tricky thing. And some people, it's a lot harder to change their brain, and that impulse might still be there, but they can get better impulse control. I don't think when you are addicted, like, you are like damned to be an addict for the rest of your life. I've seen it happen.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that, because I've heard stories of people that, yes, they struggle with addiction for the rest of their lives, but then also you hear the stories of they had one moment in their life or a certain event happened where they just said, I'm not going back. I'm not touching it again. I'm not doing it again. And they never thought about it again, and they never touched a bottle or touched a drug or whatever. It was that moment in life when they told themselves, you got to change, and they do it, and they never touch it again, right? So I agree with you in the sense that I think it varies with everybody, and I think that, yeah, you could be considered an addict for the rest of your life, but that temptation could be eliminated by changing those brain waves and that
and you can absolutely change your impulses. And addiction runs in my family, and it's semi-genetic, but it is onset and environment based as well. So like it didn't affect everyone, but I've seen some family members completely beat it and never drink again. And I've seen other family members that they didn't have that fortunate drive, and they didn't do it when they were young enough. And they had a lot of trauma. So I think it depends on environment. It depends on your drive to change, your motive, and if you have a support system to actually break that. But on a neurological level, I absolutely do think it's possible.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just want to backtrack and say that I wasn't knocking 12 steps. The many recovery pathways out there are out there for a reason, because it's not a one size fits all. What might work for someone might not work for another. So I just wanted to go back out there and say I'm not knocking 12 steps. It was just a thought.
Yeah.
But go ahead now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good thing to clarify. But I do think that if someone's struggling with impulse control, it's not doomed to the rest of their life, like they can break it if they have the right resources and the right intention. In my own opinion, I do believe that.
Yeah, you just have to stick to it and do the things that work for you.
Well, we're running short here on time, and you're, like I said, we could go down the rabbit hole, on this topic and have you back for 3 or 4 more episodes, and you're more than welcome to do that, right? But before we, like I said, I want to talk about stress addiction in the last 5 minutes, but before we do that, is there a way that people can find you, social media, like where, if they are looking for help, or where is it that you work? Do you, kind of I'm giving you a little bit of time to plug yourself, so that way, people can find you.
Yeah, everything that I do is virtual. So my main platform is LinkedIn, actually. So it's just my name, Sienna Colonese. And then I do have a website for my company. It's called Through Rain, and it's just through THROUGH and then RANE.com. And there you can check out everything that I do. I have neurointegrative mini programs people can do. And then I also have like one spot for individual coaching left right now, but I'm going to start a wait list once that fills. But if anyone's interested in contacting me, those are the best.
They should be. Yeah. You are amazing, and I think you're through Rain should definitely be utilized. I wish you all the best. But let's talk about stress addiction
real quick before we move on. Just remind me at the end of the episode, I want to do a giveaway. I see that you have some apparel here.
I do.
I want to do a giveaway at the end of the episode, so we'll do that. I just wanted to make sure you guys remind me, because I'll forget.
Oh, that's perfect.
So let's talk about stress addiction, this last topic before we have to part ways. Like, what is it about stress addiction, and what exactly is it? Like, who would be addicted to stress? Like,
a lot of high performers or very, very busy people are addicted to stress and don't really know it. I was for a while, and I didn't really realize what was happening, but I was always in this heightened state of like, I need to get to the next thing. I have to do this. And there was not 1 second where my mind was quiet, and it was always chasing another thought, another to do, another sense of stress in a way. And what I learned about this is when you're stressed, you're activating your HPA axis, you're releasing cortisol, but you're also releasing dopamine. And when you're releasing dopamine, it activates your reward circuits in your brain. So your brain can actually like that sense of stress to an extent, because
enjoy the chaos.
Yeah. And because stress used to be something we need to survive, right? So we need stress, and good stress is a motivator. It makes us act faster. It's awesome. But when you get to a state of chronic stress and you keep this really high level of stress, your brain gets so used to those chemicals that when you're not stressed out, it's uncomfortable because you're so used to being in this like go, go, go state. When you're not thinking or you're trying not to think, it's like, I should be doing something. I feel like I need to be thinking about something in a sense. And it just gets into this cycle where you actively seek something that can provide that stress or thoughts that provide that occupancy in your mind to make you more up there.
So I'm glad you brought this up because I'm listening to you and I find it fascinating, right? So you put yourself in a heightened sense of stress, right? Like you're always, but then can't that cause, like, no one can operate or function that long in that state. So would you say that some people turn to substances to say, hey, like, I need to turn it off for the weekend. It's Friday. Like, I'm going to do brunch on Saturday. I'm going to do brunch on Sunday. I'm going to just hang out with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
My guys. And so now you're just trying to turn it off with the substance like alcohol or, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're just kind of, it's imbalanced, right? Because you know, high stress, but I know I can turn it off, which could lead into a whole nother, you know, realm of problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
and that's totally related. And I'm glad you bring that up because that actually does lead to kind of a worse cycle because you're not actually progressing through stress management techniques. It's more of like an avoidance technique.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with like scrolling or something that is like instant gratification in the same way as substances, it makes that cycle worse. So you're wanting that dopamine more instantly, more often, and then you get stuck of this constant craving kind of cycle where you're seeking behaviors, seeking things that give you that gratification, but that ultimately are bad for your mental health.
Yeah. So what would be, real quick, what would be a couple of healthy ways to stop this stress addiction besides, you know, turn into a bottle or doom scrolling?
Excellent question. Yes, there are methods of natural dopamine, healthy dopamine, and that is anything from meditation to walking outside, exercise, a lot of stuff we talked about, but like those small swaps where it's something that you're not in front of a screen, you're not utilizing a substance, and you're not behaving in unhealthy habits. You can swap them with small things you do enjoy, like creative habits, things that actually feed your brain in a positive way and improve your mental health. And usually those take longer. Like a yoga session is going to take more than scrolling on your phone for 20 minutes. But it's going to end up regulating your nervous system and regulating that cycle, and it will make you less stressed out instead of keeping you in that kind of peak, you know, peak,
that high, and then try to get to the low, and then you're like this, right? And so what would you say would be an effective tool? Yoga, or, you know, like taking a walk, but you know how they say the witch's hour happens around 3 or 4 in the morning, right? You wake up and you're stressed, so your body naturally wakes up, and now you're on your phone scrolling because it's late at night. And you don't
sounds like me.
No.
Right? So what would you suggest? You just drop down in the living room and do
I would say in that situation, progressive muscle relaxation is something I love to recommend to my clients, and I do recordings for some of them sometimes, but it's when you go through each part of your body and you tense it for a couple seconds and then you release, and it's pretty much centered around releasing physical tension but also mental tension. It can reduce the activity of your amygdala also, which is like your emotional hub, totally linked to stress. So small things like that, they don't take very long. You could do it for 5 minutes. But because you mentioned waking up in the middle of the night, I have to mention I drink functional mushroom coffee, and that has helped me sleep through the night like I have never been able to in my life, because I used to wake up several times throughout the night. I've been drinking it for like a year and a half now.
And you drink it at night, or you drink it?
I drink it in the morning, but it regulates the chemicals in your brain. I've done so much research on it before I actually looked into it and started drinking it, but it's awesome. It saved my sleep. So
I have sleep problems too.